The 21st century is a very exciting time for fans of Australian dinosaurs. This year, in 2021, the largest dinosaur ever discovered in Australia was described. Its name? Australotitan cooperensis. The fossil bones of the original specimen, called Cooper, indicate that the Titanosaur was between 25 and 30 metres in length, and is currently ranked in the top 10 to 15 biggest dinosaurs in the world. But here's a quick question for you. If you wanted to see the bones of the largest dinosaur in Australia, which museum would you go to? Do you know? Because many people have no idea. No idea that there even are natural history museums all over Australia. And that's because these museums are popping up in direct response to the amazing fossil discoveries being made all over Australia right now. And the state with the most dinosaur discoveries being made every year is my home state of Queensland. Hi, I'm Andrew. Welcome to Prehistoric Australia. Get ready, because today's episode is going to be your ultimate guide to the top 6 prehistoric museums you must visit in Queensland. The first museum I want to talk about is the Eromanga Natural History Museum. Now, last year in 2020, I finally got the opportunity to drive out and see this museum that I'd always read about. And while I was there, I got to see the fossil bones of the largest dinosaur yet discovered in Australia, Australotitan cooperensis. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself now. Australotitan's fossilised remains date back to the late Cretaceous period, between 96 and 92 million years ago, and are showcased inside the holotype collection room. But for preservation purposes, I didn't take any photographs, so this is just a little bit of a tease. Overall though, I enjoyed the tour around the museum. I learnt that the first titanosaur bones around Eromanga were discovered in 2004. I was introduced to the bones of other titanosaur specimens, such as Zach, Sid, Monty, and Tom. The museum also has a large collection of Australian megafauna. Australian megafauna include gigantic forms of mammals, birds, and reptiles that evolved after the non-avian dinosaurs became extinct 66 million years ago. They only became extinct around 46,000 years ago. You'll get to see many of the specimens that were discovered near the town of Yulo in southwest Queensland. In particular, the museum is absolutely filled to the brim with Diprotodon specimens. Diprotodon is a gigantic distant relative of wombats, the size of elephants. You can see a famous specimen called Kenny inside the holotype collection room alongside Cooper the Titanosaur. Here's the best bit. While I was there, I got to prepare a Diprotodon fossil. I know, how exciting. So I got to do that because I paid to do the fossil preparation experience at the Eromanga Natural History Museum. When possible, the staff give you a choice between if you want to prepare a dinosaur bone or a megafauna bone. I chose the megafauna bone and was given Diprotodon. For me, it was like a dream come true. I was then taught by a senior museum technician how to safely dig the fossil out of sedimentary rock using acetone, a paintbrush, and a dental tool. It was an amazing experience. I just can't wait to go back to the museum again. But next time, I'm either going to do a dinosaur dig or a megafauna dig. Not sure yet, but either way, it'll be ticking off bucket list goals. This year, in 2021, I took my parents on a month-long road trip to see the sights of outback Queensland. Along the way is a tourist route called the Dinosaur Triangle. If you drive north of Eromanga for 9 hours, you will find yourself at the town of Hughenden. Hughenden was the first town we visited as part of our family trip to the Dinosaur Triangle. The first museum we visited was the Flinders Discovery Centre. This museum is located right in the middle of town. We thought that the most impressive feature of the museum was the skeletal, life-size reconstruction of Muttaburrasaurus, a plant-eating dinosaur that was discovered close to the nearby town of Muttaburra. It loomed large as we entered the museum, and was very difficult to get a selfie with. The walls of the museum were lined with cabinets filled to the brim with locally discovered fossils. Most of these fossils were marine animals dated back to the early Cretaceous period. Back then, the town of Hughenden was underwater and part of the Eromanga Sea. There were also some dinosaur bones on display, dated back to both the early and late Cretaceous period. A nice surprise for my parents was the documentary we watched about how Porcupine Gorge formed. Porcupine Gorge is a spectacular gorge located 1 hour north of Hughenden. The documentary explained how the different layers of rock formed in Porcupine Gorge over time. It's pretty neat because it's accompanied by a diorama that lights up rock layers as they are discussed in the video. All in all, I highly recommend going to check out the Flinders Discovery Centre. Oh, and while you're there, make sure to talk to the locals behind the counter. When I was there in 2018, they gave me a handout with a list of local fossil sites. So you could be lucky, go search where the local fossil sites are, and you may be able to find your very own fossil. Next stop on our outback adventure was the town of Richmond. The whole town is themed around prehistoric creatures, but especially Kronosaurus. There is even a water park for kids themed around Kronosaurus. But of course, I'm a big kid, so I took a dip. The main attraction in Richmond is the Natural History Museum called Kronosaurus Corner. At the front of the museum are statues of Kronosaurus and Minmi. Inside the museum, you're first taken to a cinema to see a fantastic documentary called Kronosaurus, King of the Sea. We learn all about how Kronosaurus was discovered and what life was like in the Eromanga Sea 100 million years ago. After the documentary, we were free to explore the museum at our own pace and have a look at all the fossils that were on display. And wow, what a collection. We saw a range of ancient marine life that once lived in the region during the early Cretaceous period, between 130 and 100 million years ago, when it was underwater. Fossils on display included marine reptiles such as ichthyosaurs, pliosaurs, plesiosaurs, and turtles. My parents were awe-inspired by the quality of the fossils and the stories behind them. In fact, here's my family's top 5 favourite fossils that we saw at Kronosaurus Corner. At number 5, Australia's largest ammonite shell, Tropeum. At 70 centimetres in diameter, it was the size of a truck tyre. At number 4, the crushed and bitten skull of Eromangosaurus. Elasmosaurid skulls are rare. This is because their heads would not only float away from their super long necks as their bodies decomposed, but they are also the first to be bitten off by large predators. This skull even has bite marks that were possibly inflicted by Kronosaurus. At number 3, the partial skeletons of Kronosaurus queenslandicus. Kronosaurus Corner has 2 skeletons of Kronosaurus on display. One of these reconstructions consists of bones from 2 different Kronosaurus specimens. The size of the fossil jaw bones are particularly impressive. Standing next to this pliosaur reminds you that this would have been one formidable predator in the Eromanga Sea. At number 2, an incredibly well-preserved cast of Cumbarosaurus. Cumbarosaurus was a plant-eating armored dinosaur. It is plain as day that its skin was covered in hundreds of tiny bony plates, called osteoderms, interlaced with larger bony plates called scutes. The stomach contents were even preserved, showing that this ankylosaur ate leaves, fruit, and seeds. At number 1, Australia's most complete plesiosaur, the Richmond polycotylid. Its completeness is just incredible to behold. This specimen is so unique and so special that the museum dedicated an entire room to it. Its exquisite completeness allows a unique look into its everyday life. Its pelvic girdle and hind flippers show healed injuries from when it survived attacks from predators. Other abnormal bone growth may even suggest arthritis, meaning that this was a mature animal when it died. So there you go. There's my family's top 5 favourite fossils that you can see at Kronosaurus Corner. You can also ask the staff at the counter for tips about where you can go searching for fossils. There's 2 main sites accessible to the public: Free Fossil Hunting Site 1 and 2 along Mountain Creek Road. Members of the public digging at these sites have made new fossil discoveries and had them named after them and their families. So you just never know when you might discover an ancient marine reptile and have it named after you. The Riversleigh Fossil Centre was our next stop. This museum is located in Mount Isa, a 4.5-hour drive west of Richmond. This museum celebrates the Riversleigh World Heritage Area, which is located north of Mount Isa and is one of the top 10 fossil sites in the world, as recognised by Sir David Attenborough. Its limestone rock layers date between 28 million and 12,000 years ago, covering a range of time during the age of mammals from the Oligocene epoch through the Miocene and into the Pliocene and Pleistocene. The fossilised remains of Australian megafauna and microfauna have been discovered. These include marsupials, monotremes, birds, reptiles, and amphibians. The Riversleigh Fossil Centre is probably my favourite natural history museum in Queensland because it's just so different. It showcases the uniquely Australian animals that existed nowhere else in the world. In the first section of the museum, I saw the fossilised remains of my favourite Australian prehistoric animal, a Caltodita, the meat-eating kangaroo, as well as the fossilised remains of Australia's famous horned turtles. After narrowly escaping an attack from Wakaleo, a bird called Dromornis was happy to teach me how to do the demon duck dance. I think it's safe to say I'm a pro now. The second section of the museum is truly magical. You get to experience walking through different Australian paleo environments. So first, I travelled back 30,000 years to the Pleistocene to see Palekestes browsing on leaves. I then travelled in time to 15 million years ago and found myself venturing into the Miocene caves, where I was sad to see a marsupial had fallen in. Fortunately, I made it out of the caves into the lush rainforests of the Miocene. There, I spotted a variety of different ancient animals hiding in the undergrowth. Personally, I think more museums should have recreations of ancient environments that you can walk through. It's incredibly immersive, and every time I visit the Riversleigh Fossil Centre, I just don't want to leave. But you should leave, because as you exit the museum, you get to meet Varanus priscus, otherwise known as Megalania. No, what a lovely gigantic monitor lizard. How cute. So if you're like me and you love Australian megafauna, you absolutely cannot miss checking out the Riversleigh Fossil Centre at Mount Isa. Winton is an outback town which is transforming how Australian paleontology is seen on the world stage. Every year Winton is in the news, highlighting a new dinosaur discovery. Before dinosaurs were discovered in Winton, Australia was seen as a backwater continent, lacking the diversity of dinosaur fossils seen elsewhere in the world. But now, with the creation of the Australian Age of Dinosaurs Museum of Natural History, Winton is now known as the dinosaur capital of Australia. So you can understand why I was so excited to be revisiting Winton this year. At the front of the museum, there's a statue of Australia's Megaraptor, Australovenator wintonensis. Then we joined a guided tour of the museum. The tour took around 3 hours in total. Along the way, we got to see the fossil laboratory, the collection room, the March of the Titanosaurs exhibit, and lastly, Dinosaur Canyon. Our tour group was first taken to the fossil preparation laboratory. Here, a paleontologist explained how dinosaurs are discovered, preserved, and prepared. The warehouse shelves are absolutely packed full of dinosaur bones waiting to be prepared. There was also an opportunity to touch a real dinosaur fossil for any visitor who wants to. But the real highlight for me was the opportunity to witness the super rare fossilised remains of a pterosaur called Pterodraco lantoni. Discovered near Winton, this discovery is significant for being the most complete pterosaur specimen so far described in Australia, at over 10% complete. Preparation of these fossils involves very carefully removing rock surrounding the bones. This work is mainly undertaken by volunteers at the laboratory who are trained by the museum. Volunteers were preparing bones that day as well, which I always think is cool to see. I thought, you know what? That's how I'd like to retire. Afterwards, we went into the collection room. Here, our tour guide explained all about the bones on display. They described which species were discovered and how dinosaurs in the area possibly interacted with each other. Some belonged to Australovenator, Australia's most complete carnivorous dinosaur. Other bones belonged to the gigantic, long-necked titanosaurs, such as Savanosaurus and Diamantinosaurus. We then jumped on board a shuttle bus and had a bumpy ride across the rugged jump up. The next stop was the March of the Titanosaurs exhibit. At the time we visited in May 2021, this exhibit was brand new and I was very excited to finally see it. The exhibit protects Australia's best preserved sauropod track site, which measures a colossal 54 metres long. Small dinosaurs such as plant-eating ornithopods and meat-eating coelurosaurs also wandered across the silt. There were also bronze statues of dinosaurs at the final exhibit, Dinosaur Canyon. Cumbarosaurus was on display, and of course, Australovenator chasing small ornithopods, bringing to life the dinosaur stampede interpretation of the Lark Quarry fossil site. These reconstructions provide a vivid picture for what life was like for Australian dinosaurs. Overall, a visit to the Australian Age of Dinosaurs Museum will inspire you to feel, as many Australian paleontologists do, that we are just at the beginning of the golden age of discoveries when it comes to Australian dinosaurs. The Dinosaur Stampede National Monument was the final museum we visited on our family outback trip. This museum is located within the Lark Quarry Conservation Park, 1.5 hours drive southwest of Winton. Basically, the shortest route is one way in and one way out, but it's worth the trip. The museum protects an extensive track site which contains over 3,000 dinosaur tracks from around 150 dinosaurs dated to 95 million years ago. One interpretation of this incredible track site is that it is the only evidence in the world of a dinosaur stampede event. After we joined the tour group, the paleontologist provided a brief history of the track site with an accompanying slideshow and video clips. Then the curtains were unveiled to reveal the Australian National Heritage Site. The whole tour group was blown away, my parents included, by the obvious significance of the site. The paleontologist used a laser pointer to identify which tracks belong to which dinosaurs. They explained that one track has been identified as belonging to a medium-sized theropod, or meat-eating dinosaur. Majority of the tracks belong to small ornithopods and coelurosaurs. One interpretation of the track site tells the story of a sudden event that caused the ornithopods and coelurosaurs to scatter in all directions. This dinosaur stampede is dated to the same time as the theropod tracks, suggesting that this event could have been caused by a predatory attack. Overall, the Dinosaur Stampede National Monument was a terrific final natural history museum for us to visit on our family adventure around outback Queensland. These natural history museums are fantastic for tourism and fantastic for science. They inspire the public to be interested and supportive of Australian paleontology. This tourism brings money into towns like Winton, Richmond, Hughenden and Eromanga that keeps these regional centres alive and prosperous. And crucially, this tourism funds paleontological digs and research that improve our understanding of Australia's natural history. Paleontologists and conservationists always remind us that we cannot understand our present and our future without first understanding our past. So I implore you, if you're travelling out to outback Queensland or you have an interest in paleontology or both, make sure you do yourself a favour and go visit the amazing prehistoric museums of outback Queensland. Thanks for watching, folks. Hope you enjoyed learning all about the different natural history museums around outback Queensland. I can tell you, it was a lot of fun doing the road trip to get there. Speaking of which, special thanks to my parents. Thanks for coming along and coping with me nerding out over Australian paleontology. It was surprising that you guys actually love the museums as much as you did. Special thanks to my mum as well for helping me to write this episode. Fans of the channel, feel free to like and subscribe as usual. If you're really big fans, you can support us on Patreon. But before we go, I want to know, Have you ever visited a natural history museum in outback Queensland? Let me know all about your experience in the comments below. Thanks folks, we'll see you next episode.